All right, let's talk about all this with our panel here tonight. We've got Dr. Michael Adams from TSU. We got Brandon Rottinghouse, our KHOU political expert, and we also have Dr.
Doctor, yes.
Well,
I'll take it.
Giving you a promotion. Vladimir Davidyuk, he's a GOP strategist. Welcome again, guys.
Thanks very much for being here. So we were just looking at this story about the national elections, and one big element, of course, is this deal in California where they're looking to get 5 new Democratic congressional districts. Of course, Texas looking for those 5 Republican new districts. So in the first brush, it looks like, well, that's just going to be a wash in terms of the numbers. Is that right, or there's maybe another bit more down the line? Who wants to jump in first?
No, what we've seen is sort of like a cascading effect with redistricting. And I think it takes away from the democratic process because, again, in California, the big thing was to have an independent board. But what happened with mid-decade in Texas this summer, you know, all of that changes. So who knows? Do we go every midterm election, we have a redistricting or whatever? And so just today, I think the governor from Maryland said that they're going to redraw their maps. And so this cascading effect, I don't really think it helps.
Okay.
It's perpetual redistricting, and the real loser here are the voters who are confused about where they're supposed to vote and when.
Absolutely.
That creates non-voters, and that's a problem for democracy. A lot of this is going to come down to how the Supreme Court rules on a case that's in front of them with respect to the Voting Rights Act. If the Voting Rights Act falls, I think we'll see every state redo their lines. So we're going to ultimately, I think, be in this perpetual redistricting cycle. At the end of it, we don't know what will happen. It's hard to know how these districts will actually appear when it comes out, but for sure it's the case that Republicans are pushing it.
Right. And gerrymandering has a long and colorful career history in the United States. I mean, it's hundreds of years old.
Yeah, no, I mean, every single district has been gerrymandered to one degree or another. So if you look across the country, that's the status quo. So when you see a state like Texas moving to redistrict mid-decade, and that sets off the chain of events that Dr. Adams was talking about, you're just basically re-energizing and weaponizing that process. And so it's responsive, it's reactionary. So whatever one state does, another state's going to have to react to it. And as Brandon said, it's going to be never-ending at this point.
Let's look at the race that everybody around the country was watching, the mayor of New York, and it looks like it's going to be Mamdani. I was not surprised to see that because of the way he ran his campaign, being so savvy with social media and everything. Do you think this sets a new template for politicians in years to come?
Yeah, this is definitely technologically and visually impactful. It definitely sets a stage for what's to come, and I think everyone's going to be playing catch-up trying to find how they can get the edge this way. But I also think it's the case that Cuomo was a uniquely bad candidate. He just wasn't able to recover from the scandals that hit him when he was governor. So it's not as much about Mamdani winning as it is often about Cuomo losing.
Yeah, it was really a vacuum, right? Because you had Eric Adams, who was doing a really bad job as mayor. You had Cuomo, who had done a spectacularly bad job as governor, trying to jump into the mayor's race. And you have this situation that Mamdani jumping into the race shortly after, these riots and protests hit the city with this discord and division. So he took advantage of that opportunity to really coalesce his base voters to really get out the vote and bring him across the line.
It'll be interesting to see how he transforms that city.
Absolutely. And I think Mamdani, he energized younger voters in terms of Gen Z voters who are looking for something different. And if we look at 2024, there was a whole lot of hoopla about these people coming over to Trump, for example, in terms of using podcasts and the like. And I think this template changes and it sends a direct signal to the Democratic Party. Come up with the message and also new strategy.
Let's bring it back home a little bit. The 18th Congressional District. Who are the two that are going to be in the runoff?
Menifee and Edwards are the two. That's pretty much as expected. They were able to raise the most money. They had a bit of a head start, the most visible candidates in the race. I'm surprised that Isaiah Martin didn't make more of a jump. He raised a lot of money this last quarter and is kind of the Mamdani of the district, where he's very progressive. And over the course of the rest of the country, you're seeing progressive candidates do pretty well. Sometimes not well enough, but in this case, I was surprised he didn't get more traction than he did.
So it would be the two of them, and then the runoff election would be sometime in January.
Probably January, February,
January, because they have to have 45 days to canvass the votes from overseas. That's based on the MOVE Act, which is the Military Overseas Voter empowerment law, and where you have to certify the ballots, and that could go into January, even early February.
Now, the
And so-
redistricting of that district, do you think that will keep voters away in the general election?
It might. I mean, the scholarship suggests that if a confused voter is a non-voter, and so you're definitely going to see, I think, a lot of people who aren't sure they should be voting. I'm curious to see what the turnout looks like in this part of the district. We can compare it to other urban counties that are also in a position where they're having, important things on the ballot. So we'll see how it looks in comparison. But a confused voter is a non-voter, and I think the more you have this churn in terms of redistricting, the harder it is for people to understand where they're supposed to be, how they're supposed to vote, what district they're in, and everything else.
And runoff voters tend to be more depressed than general election voters, not only because they're less interest and if their candidate lost, they're not interested in voting in the runoff, but also they may have been completely tied to one particular campaign versus the other.
Right. And if the maps were to go into effect, the irony, you'll have the two runoff candidates running for this seat, but also running in the March primary. So that's greater
That's a
confusion.
lot of running. That's
nonstop.
That's a
That's
sprint
right.
and a
Running
marathon
simultaneously.
all at the
Right.
same time.
Right.
What do you think we should be looking at in terms of the results of these elections, not just locally but nationally, in advance of the midterms?
Well, we're in the middle of a government shutdown,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
That, I think, will have some implication here. The politics of this could shift pretty easily, the national discussion about what that looks like. So it's possible that these races play into that. But I think, too, the Democrats, after 2024, had to really think hard about where they were and the messaging that was appropriate, the kind of coalitions they were able to put together. So this will help them to understand that. And it looks to me like they're able to build a coalition that is more along the lines of the one they hoped they would get, but didn't get in 2024.
Yeah, up
And
until
if
now.
that's the case, though, how do the Republicans respond?
Well, yeah, up until now, Democrats really haven't had a message other than we're against anything Trump is for. And so now they have things that they can point to. Now, whether or not those wins will translate across other parts of the country, can what happened in New York translate to Missouri? Can what happened in Virginia translate to Kentucky? That remains to be seen, because those are really key locations that are primarily geared towards that particular voter subset, which leans exclusively that direction. So it remains to be seen if they can translate those wins across the country.
So this is kind of interesting too, because we're talking about New York. Maybe this is going to be sort of, like a weather vane. And there are a lot of big ideas Mamdani is bringing, but they're expensive, right?
Yeah.
Do I have this right? It's like
Absolutely.
free childcare, free city buses, government-owned, city-owned grocery stores. I've read it's like $9+ billion. I mean, even for New York City, that's a lot of money.
It is. And given the fact that the president says that he's not going to support it.
Well, and there's
If you
that.
throw that in.
There's that. So realistically, what do you think the likelihood is that he's going to be able to affect the kind of change that he wants? And isn't that necessary for, if New York is going to sort of be a flagship for for other cities to follow, do they have to show some results? What is the likelihood they're going to be able to get those kind of results with that kind of a price tag?
Yeah, I do think they have to be able to win some of these, because if they don't, then they'll definitely get opposition and push back to say, well, look, you promised all these things and it didn't deliver, or you promised it and it didn't work the way you thought it would. That is both, I think, problematic for Democrats, because I think you're exactly right that we're talking about a type of race here where Democrats are excited, young Democrats especially, and if you disappoint them by not delivering, then it's just as bad as losing, in effect.
Okay, let's get back to here in the local race in District 18. If it ends up being Christian Menefee and Amanda Edwards, what are they going to have to do to win the runoff, each one of them?
Money.
Yeah,
It's going to take a lot of money.
More
a lot
money.
of money.
Yeah.
A lot of money. Right.
Ton of money. Part of the problem that they both have is that they've both been minor players on the political scene up until recently. They've been mostly on the side or in the shadows, basically yielding the stage to the larger political figures, Whitmire, Sylvester Turner, Sheila Jackson Lee. And now that they have the stage and an opportunity to present themselves, this is really an opportunity for them to present themselves to a broader public, to the broader group of voters that they're trying to appeal to, rather than just a narrow group that comes up in this particular primary election. In terms of the voters that they're trying to reach, they're going to have to actually, like Brandon said, they need a lot of money and a lot more exposure.
And you have to get them back to the polls, all right? At the same time, running in a primary and also in a runoff election, which is a lot of confusion. Right.
And a lot could happen between now and February, right?
Yeah.
So there could be a complete political sea change. We don't know what's going to happen. So it's hard to know definitively, but it's money is going to be the big factor. They have to have money
Right.
down.